Well, in a previous video, I showed that playing the lottery was probably not the smartest thing to do, and instead, you should probably just take your money and put it in the stock market, which is less risky if you think about it, and you could wind up with $100,000, $1 million across, say, 40 years. But if you do want to play, and given the jackpots with the Powerball and the Mega Ball, or in fact somebody just won one of those, are actually at the point where the expected value, that is the probability of you playing times the amount, is actually maybe worth it. Let's look at that again. And here are some of the odds for some of the major games, and sure enough, down there at the bottom with the most difficult odds is the Powerball and the Mega Millions. And do be reminded, you pick sometimes maybe 5, maybe 6 balls plus a bonus ball, and look at those odds. 250 million to 1. But if that's the case, and you are going to play, and it does kind of make mathematical sense, if the jackpot is greater than the odds, well, maybe there are some strategies that would make a better effective bet. And probably one of the basic, simpler ones that a lot of people seem to miss because of their own predilections is not to play the same numbers as anybody else. Duh. Well, wait a minute, what do I mean? People love to play birthdays, and birthdays only go to what? At a maximum 31. So maybe having the random choice, whether by you or by the computer, a quick pick, if you will, is something to consider. Because, in fact, the last payoff was half of the numbers were above 31. And to make this perfectly clear, it means you're not have to share. So the quick pick is one way to go, or I actually purposely only bet high numbers. This is perhaps where we can look to the economists for some opinions. Notice I did use the plural because with a dozen economists, you will get 24 opinions. And they like to do something called utility analysis. And they argue, and I think correctly so, that people tend to avoid equivalent losses more than they choose to seek out equivalent gains. And the arguments generally continue with an explanation tend to avoid gambles, although notice here we're still going to examine that gamble. Let's say somebody has a possibility of 25 or 25,000 or 75,000 or 50 or 100, whatever, and we'll see here that at 25 they get 5 units of utility, smiles if you will, and at 75 they get about, say, 7.2, and at 50, if you'll notice, is actually below the expected value, which if you think about it, it's just adding the 7.2 plus 5.0 together, taking an average, 50% each, and that would be 6.1. And you'll notice on the graph, that's not 50, but it's about 43.3 equivalent certainty units. In the previous graphic, I was using natural logs for you mathematicians or mathemagicians out there, and I can use regular ordinary base 10 logs, a little easier to handle, and you can show, and trust me, that the result in the analysis is identical. And it makes it easier because you should remember this, even though you thought you never would have to, that it's the number of zeros of base 10 which gives you the exponent, which turns out to be utility or smiles. And again, while generally the utility analysis one winds up concluding usually to avoid gambles, buy insurance, etc., that we can take these numbers and let's say the payoff is 100 million. And that'd give you 8 smiles or utility or exponent units, if you will. Or you could go in a group, a pool, and only take a tenth of it, splitting it with 10 people, that would give you, well, 1 out of 10 chance of 10 million, which would give you 7 smiles, but 10 times the chance of getting them. That's 70. Or you could do a pool of 100, only winning 1,000,000. It's 6, but that's times 100, giving you 600 smiles. And, of course, it goes with saying that if you do have a pool, everything should be in writing. You should have a designated person who, if they do their own bets, that is clearly a segregated pool, or even better, that they don't, and that you have contingencies in writing for if somebody misses, or, just do a little bit of homework, something to think about with Dr. C Invests.